So, what does it take to build a multi-billion-dollar empire from the ground up, especially when you're starting at age 49? Well, we're about to dive into the incredible story of Nykaa. It's really a masterclass in strategy, timing, and, one woman's absolutely audacious bet on herself. Okay, let's just start with a number that, well, it just stops you in your tracks. $7.03 billion. That's the personal net worth of founder Falguni Nayar right after Nykaa's IPO. I mean, wow. And believe me, the story of how she got to that number is even more incredible. Yeah, just think about that for a second. This is not your typical Silicon Valley story of a 20-something founder in a hoodie, right? No, this is about a seasoned professional who, after an absolutely stellar career, decided to risk it all and just completely rewrite the rules of the game. So this all leads to the one big question, right? How on earth did a former investment banker with basically zero retail experience build India's biggest beauty empire from scratch? Okay, let's dive in and find out. All right, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the founder's audacious bet. Then, we'll see how they cracked the beauty code. After that, we'll get into Nykaa's winning formula, check out the billion-dollar payoff from their IPO, and finally, we'll ask, what's next for Nykaa? All right, first up, a founder's audacious bet. Because look, to really get Nykaa, you first have to understand the person who built it and the absolutely massive leap of faith she took. I mean, look at this journey. Falguni Nayar's resume was basically the definition of corporate success. A postgrad from IIM Ahmedabad, a long and super successful career at Kotak Mahindra Capital, where she rose all the way to managing director. This is the point where most people are thinking about winding down, maybe planning for retirement, but not her. At 49, she just walked away from all of it to fulfill a dream and start something completely new. And here's what's so telling about those early days, right? The early investors, they weren't really betting on a business plan. They were betting on her. This quote from Rashad Mariwala says it all. The bet, however, was on Falguni. The idea was important, for sure, but the real investment was in her experience, her vision, and her just relentless drive. That's the kind of confidence she inspired. So what was this big idea that she bet everything on? Well, that brings us to our next section, cracking the beauty code. See, Falguni Nayar spotted some huge, glaring gaps in India's beauty market that nobody else was really solving. Think about what it was like back then. For consumers, buying beauty products was a total gamble. You'd wonder, is this product even authentic? Finding what you needed was tough, getting good advice was nearly impossible, and returns, forget about it. But it wasn't just tough for customers. For the brands, reaching the whole country was a logistical nightmare. Niche brands, especially, just couldn't get a fair shake. So you had this frustration on both sides, and that's exactly the massive opportunity Nykaa jumped on. Which leads us right into Nykaa's winning formula. Because, spotting a problem, that's the easy part. Actually building a business with a real defensible moat to solve it, now that's the hard part. Okay, this right here was probably their single most important strategic decision. See, most e-commerce sites back then, like Amazon or Flipkart, were just marketplaces. They connect buyers and sellers, that's it. Nykaa did the exact opposite. They went with an inventory-led model, meaning they bought and held all the stock in their own warehouses. Now, this was way more expensive and complex, for sure. But, and this is crucial, it gave them total control. They could guarantee product authenticity, they controlled the entire customer experience, and here's the really brilliant part. Due to Indian regulations around FDI, this model gave them a kind of shield against huge foreign competitors who couldn't operate the same way. Super smart. And the other key part of their formula? Curation over discounting. They just refused to play the price war game. While everyone else was slashing prices and offering crazy deals, Nykaa focused on being a trusted platform. They built real relationships with brands, which in turn attracted all these premium and international brands that you couldn't find on other discount sites. It created this amazing virtuous cycle. The best brands trusted Nykaa, which meant customers trusted Nykaa. And they scaled all this up using a pretty powerful 4-step approach. First, acquisition, getting customers in the door with smart content and social media. Then, onboarding, making sure that first experience on the website or app was super smooth. The real magic, though, was in engagement and retention. They used loyalty programs and personalization to keep people coming back. And finally, monetization. Once you have that loyal, engaged base, the revenue follows. So you put all that hard work together, and what do you get? Well, that leads us to the billion-dollar payoff. The company's IPO wasn't just successful, it was an absolute blockbuster.
one of the biggest in India's history.
I mean, just look at this number, 82.5. That's how many times their IPO was oversubscribed. Think about that. For every single share they offered, there were more than 82 people trying to buy it. The demand was just astronomical. It was a massive, massive vote of confidence from the market. And here's something you don't see very often. Even after this massive public offering, the promoters, Falguni and her family, kept a majority stake, over 52%. This is so important because it means she's still in the driver's seat. She doesn't have to bow to short-term pressure from the market. She can keep guiding the company based on her original long-term vision. And that optimism wasn't just about the past, it was all about the future. I mean, look at these projections from JM Financial. They were forecasting revenue to grow at a compound annual rate of almost 45% and EBITDA at a mind-blowing 71%. The message was clear. This growth story was far from over. This quote from Falguni Nayar really sums up their entire philosophy. She says they could stop growing today and become super profitable right now. But that's not the goal. They've deliberately chosen a more balanced model, one that prioritizes sustainable, long-term growth. They're playing the long game, not just chasing next quarter's results. So what does that long game actually look like? In our final section, let's talk about what's next for Nykaa. We'll look at the big opportunities and also the very real challenges that are on the horizon. So where is that next wave of growth supposed to come from? Well, it looks like they're making two huge bets. First, international expansion. They're taking their omnichannel model to the Middle East with a venture called Nykaa. And second, something completely different, a B2B platform called Superstore by Nykaa. This is aimed at helping all those small, independent retailers across India, basically democratizing distribution for a massive, unorganized market. But look, the path forward is definitely not a straight line. The risks are real. Competition is heating up like crazy, especially in the fashion space. There's always the risk of diluting their margins just to chase growth. And you have to look at their concentration risk. A huge chunk of their sales comes from just a few categories: makeup, skin, and hair. And a significant portion comes from their top 3 vendors. Any hiccup where could be a big problem. And all of that leaves us with the one big, lingering question for the future. Look, Nykaa built its entire empire on this premium, curation-led strategy. It's what made them stand out from the discount-driven crowd. But now, as competition gets more and more intense, can that winning formula keep them on top? That right there is the billion-dollar question they have to answer next.